Think we are going live now on Facebook. Let me check. Okay, so we are live on Facebook now.
All right.
All right, so welcome to the monthly Money Matters Convo, a platform where we discuss financial literacy, financial education, and financial awareness. And just like we promised you, today we have an amazing personality with us. Our guest is someone who is working with university students. And so he is the Dean of Student Success at the University of Nevada, Reno. And today we are going to have an insightful conversation with him to know how his university is teaching financial literacy and his personal experience with regards to personal finance. And so in about 45 to an hour conversation, we are going to unveil all this important information. But before we go into our conversation, let me read brief profile of our guest, and then we will zoom into our conversation. And so our guest holds the position of Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Student Success within the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno. He also serves as an instructor within the College of Business, where he teaches courses focusing on entrepreneurship. Additionally, he's also a PhD researcher in information technology in education, specializing in AI and its applications in learning. And so, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Jeremy Tiedt. Is that right?
Yeah, we all got there. Tiedt.
Yes, the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Student Success, the College of Business, University of Nevada, Reno. You are welcome, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm excited to be here. I know it's morning time for me and evening for you, so I guess I'll say good evening to you, good morning to the any folks who are perhaps watching in the United States, particularly on the West Coast. So thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation and deciding to do this with us. And so we created a monthly Money Matters Convo to have conversations so we can drive financial literacy education. I work at a center, the Center for Financial Literacy Education Africa, and our goal is to develop and promote financial literacy skills. And we are doing this in Ghana, across Africa, and we want to feed it into the global conversation. And so we are really excited having you on board. And so we won't waste much time. Let's go into our conversation. And the first question I want to ask is, give us an idea of how you grew up and whether money was a conversation growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in Nevada, Reno, Nevada right now. I grew up in Wisconsin, in the middle of the United States, and I grew up in a small farming town. My family, we were not necessarily farmers, but we grew up in, that was kind of the environment I grew up in. My parents worked jobs, normal jobs, I would say. My dad worked for the police department. My mom worked for a university, and I would say we were a middle class family that, from the 80s and 90s, and money was something that was definitely discussed. My mom would, her name is Penny, and you could definitely call her a penny pincher. That is for sure. She was a very frugal lady, but at the same time, I had three brothers, so there's four boys in the household, and there's a lot of food to be eaten, a lot of clothes to be torn up, playing sports and doing all of the things that come with raising four boys. She was also someone who always, she had dreams of things that she wanted to be able to afford and do. And she made that well aware to us when we were younger, that there are certain things that she had aspirations for, and that they were going to be saving for those type of things, their retirement home, their ability to, go on vacations and do all of those things. So growing up, it definitely felt like there were times where I was like, do we have any money? Because it doesn't seem like we have any money. with the way my mom makes it sound. But at the same time, if we needed shoes for basketball, or if we needed something for a sport, or those type of things, we were able to do them. But money was definitely a big part of the conversation growing up. My mom definitely made us aware, if we didn't finish our dinner, if we wasted a glass of milk, or ripped up some new pants playing in the yard, she made us aware how much it would cost, and that it wasn't just a small thing, that now we have to go buy something new. Obviously, and again, four boys running around in the house, so we also wrestled around, broke some stuff. I can remember her definitely letting me know how much a lamp cost that we broke, and how much the couch cost when we spilt stuff all over it. So it was top of mind, I would say, from an early age.
Great, great. So let me ask a follow-up question. How has the conversation you had with your mom, how have this conversation shaped your perspective about life and money in general?
Yeah, I know. My wife will definitely laugh at me because she says sometimes, there are certain things where I'll bring up money, and she's like, "You sound just like your mom." So that's, I think, in a good way. I think in a good
Yeah,
way.
sure.
But as in our household, I do more of the looking at the finances, and paying the bills, and those type of things. I mean, she's working full time, and obviously she's contributing, and she takes a look at it as well. But I'm the one who's doing more of the long-term planning, if we need to get a new vehicle, or if we're going to go on vacation, those type of things. So it's definitely something that I I would say had an impact on me. I know that between me and all of my brothers, we will definitely joke around. My mom's actually coming into town tomorrow, and I'm sure there will be something that we'll talk about, that we'll joke around about, how much something costs, or, going out to eat. Going out to eat was always kind of a big one. My mom's not a very big, like, foodie person. So, going out to eat, again, six people, that's an expensive thing. And she's like, we could have went and did this, or we could have done that. And instead,
Yeah.
we're eating $12 cheeseburgers, and getting $2 sodas, or whatever it is. So I think that would probably be one of the things that I definitely say has kind of stuck with me. I mean, I like food. I used to work at a lot of restaurants and bars, as a waiter and a bartender throughout college and things. Um, but like, going out to eat, like, I like it, it's fine, but I'm not a huge food person. And um, I'm probably would rather spend my money somewhere else, something that I can, pair of pants, pair of shoes, something I'm going to wear for quite a while, as opposed to a single meal in which it's done within a couple hours or so.
Great, great. So mostly I tell people what we pick from our infancy, what we pick from our childhood ages, mostly live with us forever. And so the conversation you will have with your kids, how you relate with them, lives with them forever. And so that's one of the reasons why teaching kids financial literacy is so important and so critical for me. And so somewhere 2019, I wrote a book, Teaching Children Financial Freedom. And my goal was to inspire parents, inspire educators to have the money conversation with their kids. Because growing up, some money conversation was a taboo. In my community, money conversation was a taboo. We don't talk about money. And if you don't do that, it tends to have a negative connotation on people when they grow up. So having such conversation with your parents, having such conversation with your mom, it's something that is really critical. And so what is your current profession and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in the introduction, to my current role I'm the assistant dean for undergraduate student success in the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno. Like I had mentioned earlier, my parents worked, I would say, kind of middle class jobs. My mom, she also worked at a university in Wisconsin. She worked on the continuing education side of things. And I can remember growing up, thinking I would never work at a university because, well, I mean, obviously I want to be a pro athlete, but that didn't work out. But and it was kind of one of those things. My undergrad is actually in journalism, broadcast journalism. And I spent a lot of time, obviously, throughout college working at different TV stations, working at newspapers, radio stations, had tons of experience in it. And it wasn't until about my last semester that I started to realize if I want to work at a TV station, I'm either doing the morning news, which means I have to be there for a 6 o'clock news that starts, or I have to do the evening news, which means I'm there at 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock. And then if I'm, someone who is doing the 10 o'clock news, I kind of started to realize, well, how am I going to have a family? And it's not that it's impossible to have a family, but in terms of like the values and the things that I wanted to be a part of, if I wanted to get to the place that I aspired to be, which would be on a 5 o'clock anchor or a 10 o'clock news anchor, well, I was going to be missing a lot of time with family. So I kind of shifted from that. Now, also, I graduated in 2008 when the recession hit. So all the media outlets were laying people off and not necessarily hiring new people. So from there, I actually moved to Thailand to teach English. And I did that for a while. So that's kind of where I would say my teaching really began. And then my interest in working in education started to really grow from there. So then I went back to grad school, worked as a grad assistant in an athletic advising office and also in our residence halls. Just got to teach a class, which I thought was really awesome. And just kind of kept growing from there, moved to a couple different universities, moved to the East Coast, moved back to the Midwest, and then eventually moved out here. Started a business with a couple friends somewhere along the way as well. And, so I think it's kind of been an interesting journey throughout, but the education piece has always been a big one for me. And a conversation, like I said, as I worked as an academic advisor, a conversation that I would always have with students is, how are we paying for all this? And it particularly in the United States in the early 2000s, there were a lot of predatory loan companies that were, letting people take out really inappropriate loans in terms of how much money, huge interest rates, and those type of things. So, and that was kind of my generation. We were I'm 39 years old now. And, if you look at student loan debt, my age group is the one that probably has almost the majority of it. I think when I talk to a freshman student now, or even in the last 10 years where I've been working at this university, they're just way more conscious of what student loan debt does because they've heard the horror stories from their parents.
Yeah.
And some of the the news articles and the TV reports and all those other type of things. So it's been something that I've always been passionate about, I guess I would say, in terms of letting students know, like, hey, you're going to get this 4-year degree and that's going to be awesome and you're going to be employable and, you're setting yourself up for a good career, but how are we paying for this? We can't just go out and take out
Yeah.
$50 worth of loans because it's going to take a long time to pay that back.
Great. That's inspiring. So now let's get to the main conversation for today. Driving financial literacy education. Like I said earlier, it's something that is really a core of what we does at the Center for Financial Literacy Education Africa. And so when we say financial literacy, what does financial literacy mean to you?
Yeah, I think in the most basic sense, it's being able to pay your bills, and at the end of the month, you have more money left than what you spent. Now I know there's obviously going to be times throughout people's lives, myself included, in which you had to fix something on your truck, or you had a medical emergency. Particularly here in the United States, I went to the dentist recently. I mean, I have a wife and 2 kids. I had to get a cavity filled, and there were still a couple bills on there from when my daughters had some dental work done. It was like, all right, well, this is going to be about $400, and that's not a small thing to walk away to have kind of creep up on you on just a random Tuesday. So, I understand that it's not always, and again, in my life as well. You're not going to be able to pay everything down every single month, but that should be the goal, and you should have some savings to make sure that when those things pop up. I have read Dave Ramsey's books. I think he does a really good job of kind of talking about having a good emergency fund, because you're going to blow out a tire on your vehicle. You might have to go to the dentist and get a cavity. Right now we actually have to have somebody come look at our bathroom sink because it's leaking, right? So, whether I'm going to give it a go this weekend and see if I can fix it myself. But if I can't, I'll have to pay somebody to fix that. And, that's not necessarily something that was put in the budget. So having a budget that you can actually look at and you can talk about in terms of, I know I make this amount. This is what my rent costs. This is what my car payment is. This is what my groceries are going to be. And, being within a certain percentage of that, and then some unexpected things there. Again, I'm not saying don't go out and have fun. Don't go get lunch. Don't go, do things with your friends and your family. Having them at least in the plan is one of the main things. So to me, financial literacy is, and also, when you, particularly here in the United States now, we've really moved to a model where lots of stuff is paid out over time, or you have the option to pay out things over time. Like if I were to go buy something on Amazon right now, even if it's like $50, it gives me the option to pay $4 a month for 12 months. Well, what interest comes with that? I recently went and got a new phone because my other phone was getting old and had a crack in it. And they're like, oh, well, would you like to sign up for the payment plan? And I was like, sure, what does that look like? And it was like absolutely absurd. It was actually, in terms of the interest I would have to pay over the course of the year, I would have bought the phone twice. And I'm like, do people really sign up for this? And they're like, yeah, because they can't afford the full phone, like right up front.
Yeah.
And they don't read the fine print.
Yeah.
Like, wow, if you don't read the fine print. So I think that's another piece of the financial literacy aspect, is before you sign on something, before you purchase something, are you actually going to go and look at what the interest rate looks like, and how much more are you going to pay for said item?
Right. So basically, all the knowledge, all the skill sets you need to structure your finances is what financial literacy is all about. And you need this knowledge, you need this skill set to be able to meet your life goals. And Jeremy has expanded on that quite really well. And so if you're watching us, financial literacy is what will make you plan your life very well. Without financial literacy, life planning sometimes do not get structured very well. And so it's important for all of us to be financially literate, so we know when to even sign our contracts, because you need to read to understand the terms in the contract before you need to sign. So it's really important. Thank you for sharing that with us. This brings me to, what are some of the financial planning, financial education courses that are being taught on your campus, University of Nevada, Reno?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our incoming freshman students participate in a boot camp the week before school starts, which is called Nevada Fit. And then each college has their own version of that. So, right, we're in the College of Business. Ours is called BizFit, Engineering Fit, etc. Right. So within this week boot camp, they participate in different lectures, and they're in groups. They get to know each other. It's kind of a welcome to college week for our students. But one of the things that we've always felt was important is introducing them, obviously, to the content that they're going to be learning as a business student, but also the financial piece as well. So in years past, we always had an accounting professor do some basic introduction to accounting type of content. this last year, we changed things up a little bit. We have a really great partnership with a bank called Greater Nevada Credit Union. And they've sponsored different things in the past, but this last time we said, why don't you guys come in and let you guys can give some of the lectures. You guys can
Yeah.
talk about what are some of the things that you see at your bank, because they're the bank is right on the other side of campus, so we have lots of students who bank there. And what are some of the things that you see that students mistakes that they make? What are things that they should start thinking of right now? And that way they're hearing it again from people in the community, because it's amazing sometimes how I'm teaching a class this semester, and right at this point I think we're in like week 12 or week 13,
Mhm.
and the students are kind of tired of hearing the things I have to say. So we have a guest speaker who's coming in next week, and he's going to probably reiterate some of the points that I've made about networking and
Yeah.
um, making the most out of your college experience. But they're just going to be like, oh man, Art just really hitting it on the head, because it's a new voice, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, and he's a professional out in the community. So we thought we would give it a try, where we have those folks come in, and they talked about, they showed different examples of, if you are taking out a student loan, what is that going to look like over a 4-year period based on this interest rate? Is it a subsidized loan? Or is it an unsubsidized loan, in which interest either starts when you graduate or starts right away? Those type of things are important for you as a student to know. And also, what does investing look like? If you can put $25, $50 away a month, what is that? Because that's the story I always tell is, so when I was in college, I started working well before college, when I was in high school and things. And not necessarily that I was like saving money or investing money, but I was studying abroad in Australia, and I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I got home, I was like, all right, I got to at least figure out a way to start putting some money away, whether it's $25, $50 a month, whatever it was, and that was when I was 21. And then by the time I got to 29 is when I bought my house. I had $15,000 kind of in this Edward Jones account, and I was able to use that to be the down payment for my house. Now, obviously, as I started working, I started putting more than $50 in it a month, but it just became a bill to me. It was, just like paying the TV bill, just like paying the cell phone bill, where that 200, 250, whatever it was, just came out and went into this account for whenever I needed it. And I didn't know if I was going to need it for a house, or if there'd be an emergency or whatever it was. Um, and so I tell all of my freshman students right now, I'm like, you're going to turn 29 at some point. Like, it's going to happen. You're going to get older. And if you start putting 50, $100, whatever it is, away now, when when you need that money to put down a down payment on a house, or pay for a wedding, or whatever it is, there will be some money aside, and you're at least getting in the habit of seeing what that does when you are investing, when you're putting money into an account that can grow through the markets.
Great. Great. So if I heard you right, you are inculcating financial literacy into the academic syllabus, where you bring companies, organizations outside campus to come in and lecture the students, share with them what is really happening on the ground. And this is something that we are trying to work with investors, so they can bring in industry experts to also share some of these practical lessons. Because just like you said, if once students hear a new voice, once they meet a new personality, they tend to attach some kind of seriousness to whatever the person is communicating. And so it's really an important aspect of how you are teaching the student financial literacy, bringing in financial institutions, bringing in financial professionals to come and share their lessons, to come and share their nugget. It's one of the best way to inculcate this financial literacy skills into the students. I think one thing we are also doing. And I think going forward, these are some of the conversations we can have and see how best we can collaborate to inculcate some of these initiatives into the school or the university system. So we are setting up research centers at various university, financial literacy research center, to one, serve as a research think tank. So within the community where the university is, they will do research and see some of the economic issues, some of the social issues that are affecting the community members, and profess solutions to stakeholders so they can help economically empower the people within the community. And so one way we do this is we partner with universities, and then we use the students as volunteers for most of our activities. And so if we want to go into the community to educate the people, we enroll the student into our mentorship program, where we educate them, we inculcate them with the financial literacy skills. They then take this skill set and go into the communities and educate the market women, educate the small business operators. And so this is something that it's something that the investor can consider if it is not happening within your community. It is something that we can have conversations and try to infuse that into the investing system. And so, aside financial literacy, what other social skills do you see relevant in this 21st century?
Yeah, well, let me back up real quick because I forgot to mention. So, right, so we have financial literacy in the boot camp, and then when they actually come into their freshman class, there's a business 101 class. That's one of the ones I'm teaching right now, and we spend some time on financial literacy during the regular semester as well. And we actually have we have a really great resource on campus that's called the Nevada Money Mentors, where they will sit down and do workshops with students, individual things as well. So there's quite a few resources on campus, because again, we know this is going to be, for a lot of students, this might be one of the biggest financial decisions that they make outside of buying a car or buying a house. College is probably the third most expensive, depending on where you go, might even be the second most expensive thing that you do outside of buying home. So, we have some of those other places or points along the way as well to make sure that they're getting a better understanding of financial literacy. Great. And then to the other question that you asked about social. Yep. So something I would say there is the communication is and I always, again, I have an undergrad degree in journalism. I've worked for the school newspaper, did podcasts before they were called podcasts, did TV shows, all those other types throughout my college experience. And I think being able to communicate well through multiple platforms, whether it's written, face-to-face conversations. Now we're in a world where lots of people have podcasts. It's very simple for you to record something on your phone and throw it up on YouTube, put it up on Facebook Live, all of those different platforms. So the ability to communicate is one that, and communicate your points both positively and being able to give constructive criticism is something that I think is something we're working on quite a bit with our students as well. We have a couple classes that focus a lot on communication, business communication. It's a required class that all students have to take. So I think that would be one of the big ones is, you get out into the working world and you might have an employer that's going to come down a little bit harder on you than perhaps a teacher did, or maybe your part-time job person will come down on you, and they might give you kind of vague instructions on how to do a project. So being able to communicate with them, what exactly are your expectations for this? What are you looking for? And being able to have perhaps tough conversations is also one that is very important. So communication, I would say, would be, for me, one of the top ones. I also work in a industry in which we're talking with students every single day. We're giving them plans for their next semester. We're giving them advice. And, if we make a mistake on one of these plans, that's going to be an expensive mistake because it's a class that they might have to take a different one. Classes are about 16 weeks. So it's 16 weeks of your life to take another class. So being able to communicate both to the person so they understand what is going on, and then also being able to write that down and send it in an email so that they have the plan and they understand the plan and you understand the plan. So I guess communication, writing skills, I think, is also one that is, again, I think I'm probably biased because I worked in journalism, and I like to think I'm a pretty decent writer. But you know, the emails sometimes that I get from students and even colleagues, it's like there's not even a hello on this. It's just a statement. And it, you know, not signing a signature. So those would probably be two of the main ones, because that's the way you're going to interact with the world. It's
Yeah.
either, you know, it's some form of communication, and you know, we are still in a place where email, everybody exchanges 100 emails. I mean, you and I exchanged a fair amount of LinkedIn messages and emails before we got here. So those two, I think, would be the top two that come to mind. Let me think on a third one for a second.
Great, great, great. What do you see collaboration skills, problem solving skills as one of those essential skill sets?
Yeah, absolutely. Collaboration, I mean, that's another place that we are headed and kind of already in is, and we do a decent amount of group work. Actually, I have class this afternoon, and we have a big assignment today where they're going to be in groups and they're going to be going through a company crisis. And, you know, students don't always particularly love group work. And I get it, because when you're a student, you know, it's very simple for student one to say, I'm cool with just getting a C, where student two is like, I want an A. But in the working world, it's all about collaboration, right? I work with a team right now on multiple projects. There's multiple teams that I'm a part of. And, you know, again, how you communicate both in person, over Zoom, written, and then how you're able to collaborate, take other people's ideas, work with those ideas. If something, so that'd probably be the third one that I think I would go with, is the collaboration, your ability to collaborate and be able to move a project forward, or just anything forward. It doesn't have to be a work project. It could be a volunteer project. You could be wanting to do a park cleanup. You could be, again, I have kids, so there's a lot of different volunteer opportunities for some of the things that they do within the community. So being able to collaborate with people and move something forward and not let it just sit.
Great, great. I mentioned collaboration because I love this quote. Alone you can go fast, but together you can go far. And one thing I learned from school is that school teaches us to compete. And so when we do project work, when we do exams, they will come out with a list. This person was first, this was second. So it brings some form of competition among people. But then when you get out of school and you come into the corporate environment, you realize you need a lot of collaboration to be able to succeed. Every project that you embark on, you need a lot of collaboration. And so collaboration skills is really key for the 21st century student if they really want to move ahead in life. Great. Now let me get really personal with with these two questions. And so we want to know your top three money mistakes or financial mistakes. Top three money or financial mistakes.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Everybody's made them, and I think I appreciate that you are trying to drive this conversation forward, because, yeah, people still don't like to talk about money. Like it's still something that, and again, like maybe I'm a little bit more open to it because I'm work at a university where I'm a public employee. So like my salary's online. If you want to go look at what my salary is, you can go find my salary. So there's no games there. It's just available to see. But I talk about with students all the time in terms of, you know, you want to start having these conversations. When you get a job, you should ask your colleagues. You should find out if you're being paid equally or adequately, because the worst thing you want to find out is that, you know, you're making less than someone who's doing the same exact job as you, and maybe you negotiated not as well, or how we got there. But to go back to your question, and I think this is also an important question. It's uncomfortable for some people, but I don't have necessarily a problem sharing it. So I would say the number one mistake that I still think about is, so when we moved here 10 years ago, my car was pretty old, and so was my wife's. She had just finished grad school, so her car was, a hand-me-down, and was kind of on the last legs, and it's a 36-hour drive from Wisconsin to Reno. So the fact that her car even got here was just a phenomenal in itself. So she gets here, and I'd only been working for a month. I don't even know if I had gotten a paycheck yet. And basically, her car dies, and we take it to the mechanic, and they're like, "These parts are rusted. It's going to cost like $2,500 to fix it. Your vehicle's probably not even worth $2,500. It's kind of up to you. What do you guys want to do?" So we go start looking at cars, and I, she had never bought a new car before. The only cars I would say new, just she had never purchased a car before. Her parents kind of handed down cars to her, and I only bought one car. And I would say we definitely got, I don't want to say taken, because the salesman was just like, "Yeah, here's a car, you can lease it. This way you have a new car," because the job that she was starting was pretty far away. So, he did a really good job of just saying, "You're going to be driving 40 minutes every day. You want to make sure you have a car that's reliable. We can put you in a lease. That way you get a brand new car. And then if you don't want it after 3 years, then you can just get rid of the lease and lease a new car or buy another one." And in that moment, it was like, "We need a car. This seems like a good deal. Let's go ahead and sign on for it." And then we sign on for it, and immediately I'm just like, "Well, this is not great, because now we are spending more money than we should have been spending a month on a car." It's a car that, after a while, it was nice because it was new, but it was small. Couldn't really do a lot of the things that we wanted to do with it, because we like to go camping. We like to do a lot of outdoor stuff, and there wasn't a lot of storage in it. And probably after a couple months, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, "If we're going to spend this much money on a car, we should have probably bought a car that we really liked." So for, I don't know, 5-6 months, we kind of just, I would say, threw away money on a lease, and that was kind of painful. And then when we finally bought the car that we actually wanted to buy, we were negative on the equity, so that kind of sucked. But I guess I should say it did suck. And so that, I would say, that was a mistake, in terms of leasing that car. I think I could have did a better job when I was in college on some of my student loans. I got them all paid off, but I definitely probably took out a little bit more than I needed to at times, where I could have been more financially responsible there. So, I would say that was definitely a mistake, and one that I talk to my students about as well. If you don't need the surplus money, that comes after it pays for your tuition, don't take it out, because you're going to spend it foolishly, or at least I did, and then you're going to have to pay it back later on. So those are probably two of them. And then there was a cell phone that I bought, a lease that I signed on for years ago, where it was kind of just one of those things where it's like, "Oh, it's only $15 a month." But then when I kind of like ran it all out, it wasn't as bad as this most recent one where they were trying to sell me on paying for it twice. But I was one where I'm like, wow, I paid a lot more than I probably needed to for that phone. So, learning from those, read the fine print. What is this actually going to cost? Do the math. Don't look at it just from how much does it cost per month? How much is it going to cost in total? And is there a way that I can still get there, or make this purchase without having to pay the extra money that's going to come off of interest?
Great. So the moral of this story is do the math. Yes.
Do the math.
Do the math. Before you pick the car loan, before you go for the car loan, make sure you do the math. Great. So share with us your top 3 financial advice.
Well, I think you probably just summed it up right there. Is like, really do the math, and think about, we are a world of consumers, right? You're buying. I mean, and social media is pushing stuff on you nonstop through different marketing. New phones, new clothes, take this trip, do this thing. Get credit card points. Now, have used credit card points. So I think if you do it correctly, there's some value there, but do the math for sure. Particularly when it's something that you're going to try to stretch out, because credit cards now do the same thing. If I were to buy something, my credit card will ping me and say, do you want to pay for this over 5 months instead of like right up front? And then they add in some fees. So do the math, read the fine print, and really think about, is this thing, because it's usually a thing, something that you consume, going to really make you that much happier? I mean, I do different work around my house, and there's times I get excited. I go to the store, I buy a tool. I like having different tools, but that tool is there to help me do this job that I'm hopefully saving money on, right? Like maybe I'm trying to redo some of my irrigation, or I'm trying to fix the faucet that is leaking. So what is the purpose of this purchase? Is it just for I want it, or how many times am I going to wear it? I'm definitely someone who I wear the same shoes for quite a long time. I wear a lot of the same clothes to work every day. I'm sure my staff out there would probably laugh at me because if I'm not wearing this jacket, I have a gray one, I have a black one, and I have a brown one. And then these shirts down here just rotate out, and a couple pairs of pants, and off we go. But and I think some of that probably comes from my mom as well. Like if I were to, I'll probably talk to her about this conversation tomorrow, and I know she wore nice clothes. It's not like she didn't dress appropriately, but I think she kind of just wore a lot of the same stuff every day. And now that I got kids, I got to get myself dressed as quickly as possible because I got to take care of all of their stuff. So it makes it a little bit easier when it's just like, all right, Thursday is gray pants, white shirt, blue jacket day.
Great, great. So make sure anything you are going to buy, make sure you can use it over and over and over again. Yeah. People
Yeah,
go
that's not to say
buy.
don't have fun, right? You can go buy. I buy silly stuff too. Like I go on trips. I spend some money stupidly as well sometimes. But try to really think through it before you're making some big purchases. Especially if you're going to stretch it out over the time period.
Yeah. So I have this quote. Before you make the purchase, pause. You pause by checking the price, understanding its usability. Is it something that you can use often? Is it something that is sensible enough? Is it something that is less expensive somewhere else? So you need to compare prices. Look for alternatives before you make that purchase. And
sorry, go ahead.
And then it's something that you can use often. So you need to look at all this analogy before you make the purchase. So very, very important point there.
And I think some of it also just comes with age, right? Like I said, I made some dumb financial decisions when I was in my 19, 20, because I thought it was important, what the clothing that I was wearing, or the trip, or paying for that meal, or doing whatever. I thought like it was more important. I think also that just kind of comes with age too, right? Where this doesn't really matter. Nobody, we all get a little too caught up in ourselves sometimes. And it's like, nobody's actually probably really looking at my shoes and thinking, those could probably, use a new pair of shoes, or, I think we get caught up in ourselves a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. When you are young, you tend to take people's opinions and views into consideration a lot. But then as you keep growing older, I realize these people don't even care about me. So why should I spend based on what they are saying? So it's really important. Now we have gotten to my favorite part of the conversation. Yes. So I call it the money word play game. Money word play game. So I have a couple of words. I will mention those words. You respond with a word or one sentence that comes to mind when you hear these words. So my first word is money. When you hear money, what comes to mind? Money.
Money, first thing that comes to mind. This sounds kind of bad. Can I get some more of it?
Okay,
How can
more
I
of
get
it.
how can I probably get some more of it right now? And I think that's, part of it's that one of my kids still in daycare. So there's a lot of costs that come in, but so, can I grab some more somehow?
Great. So this tie into earning. You need to increase your earning ability
Yeah.
because there's this code that says without consistently increasing your income, there's no way you can sustain your wealth. So you need to always sustain your income, find ways of making more money, genuine ways of making good money. Great. Marriage.
Uh, I would say awesome. Love, like all of
Love.
the stuff that, where money doesn't matter, uh, is I guess what I would think of when I think of that. My wife, fortunately, she was someone who didn't particularly care a ton. I mean, I remember having a conversation with her one time where because she didn't have any student loan debt and I had student loan debt, and being concerned that, like, are you sure you're going to want to marry me I'm like, I'm paying this off and it's going to be gone, but like, it's going to impact our ability to like do certain things. And she was like, no, I don't care. She's like, I don't even care what job you have. Let's just be happy. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. We'll live within our means. And I think that was a big thing that my dad did. My dad told my mom, I remember my mom tells a story. My dad's passed away at this point, but um, that like he got opportunities. So he worked for the police department and as a dispatcher, and he got an opportunity to be promoted, but he'd have to do the overnight shift. And my mom's like, it'd be really great if you took this promotion because like we could use some more money because we got 4 boys. And he's like, no, he's like, I don't want to miss spending time with my family. I don't want to miss spending time with you. He's like, so we're just going to cut costs. Like if we just won't do as many trips, we won't buy as many clothes, we won't get as many toys. You know, this is more important than those things.
Great. Great. So marriage, love. Love
Yes.
conquers everything. So it's really important. Great. Savings.
Service is what you said.
Savings.
Sa-
Savings.
Savings.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta have it. You gotta figure out some way, just make it part of the bills. Right now, I mean, we have a certain amount that just comes out every month that just goes over to a savings account, and then it's just there kind of for the emergency fund. So figure out a way, and it's only going to take a couple paychecks before your mindset just shifts to it's just a bill that comes out.
Great. So treat savings as an expense and make sure a percentage of your income goes into savings. Great. Spending.
Try to do less of it. We're coming up on the holiday season, and this my wife and I were actually taking a trip to Cape Town, South Africa. So we're bringing a group of students there for an educational experience, and
Great.
we're going to put on a little bit of a vacation beforehand. So I'm like, hey, we got to really buckle down and save some money because there's stuff that when we get over there, I want to be able to go and do. So, when you say the word spending right now, in my mind, it's like, let's do none of it. Once we get there, we're going to do a lot of it.
Great, great, great. And I think your next vacation destination point will be Ghana. So put that on your
Ghana
to-do
is
list.
definitely is on the list.
Yes.
One of the fellow from well, you said, so you're from Ghana and you're from 2019, right?
Yes.
So do you know Hamza?
Not really.
So Hamza was one of the fellows who came to Nevada.
Okay.
But well, he moved back to Nevada. I was going to go visit him in Ghana.
Great.
But he moved here instead.
And my sister-in-law is currently reading masters in Nevada. So
Oh, have to
yeah.
check it
So
out.
so yeah. So I need to connect you to her So you can show her all the nice locations in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Wants.
Want?
Yes.
A lot. There's lots of things that, again, I think we're in an interesting time now because this thing right here is attached at everybody's hip, at least in the United States, and I'm sure in your home countries as well. And advertisement is just in your face nonstop. And it's like, sure, would I want a new pair of shoes? Absolutely. Would I want that bag that they're showing on the Instagram feed? Absolutely. Would I want to go on those trips? I mean, I think it's kind of in your face just at all times now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to figure out a way to limit your wants.
Yes.
Great. Budgeting.
Uh, Not fun, but a must. It's I think it kind of shows you just how quickly your money just goes away.
Yeah.
One thing that's kind of unique, not unique, I guess, but my wife and I, both of our jobs, we get paid the whole month's salary on the first of the month. So it's like money comes in, and then for the rest of the month it just leaves. Like no more money comes in, where I kind of sometimes wish I still got paid like every other week or every
Yeah.
50 days or whatever it was, because now it's like the first, all right, this looks awesome, and then it's like all just goes away.
Mm. Hey. Net worth.
Net worth is,
Yes.
something you got to pay attention to. I think it's something, again, I that's why I think this conversation is so important. Is obviously, everybody deals with finances in some regard, but how much attention they pay to it is is a different story. So you could be looking at your net worth and say, like, yeah, I got all this money in savings or in my retirement or my 401k, or I have a lot of equity in my home, but how stretched out are you on credit cards? Again, maybe you're leasing a car, maybe you're on some sort of payment plan for a medical procedure. So just kind of looking at your true net worth if all bills came due right now today.
Great. Great. Cash flow.
You got to have it. Got to figure out a way to have some of it. And I mean, we teach business classes here, so something we talk about at least in our classes all the time is what does your cash flow look like, and how do you manage that?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I think in August Money Matters Convo, our guest made a statement. He said he doesn't like to see money go. He likes to see money grow. And that was profound for me.
That's a great statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Investments.
Get in as soon as you can. I mean, again, I work primarily with undergraduate students and particularly freshmen. So it's just how can we put some money aside? How can we start getting into the investment markets? We had a guest speaker a couple weeks ago now who came in and talked about it. He works in wealth management, and he's beating the same drum you and I are, about the importance of financial literacy and kind of showing what type of path our students could be on, assuming if they start saving even this amount, as an 18-year-old, as a 19-year-old, because time is on their side right now.
Yeah. Great. Insurance.
Need to have that as well. If something were to happen to me, or happen to my wife, obviously that turns your world upside down. We're making our way right now, but if all of a sudden, something happens to us, or particularly in the United States, we are very much a culture in which people are. I'm thinking of car insurance at this point. We like to sue each other, so
Yeah.
need to make sure you have the proper insurances in place.
Great. Financial independence.
Is what you should strive for. I think that was something that my mom always talked about. she's like, no, like we are trying to save money. And then my mom and my dad were able to retire earlier than most people in the United States are able to retire. And, I don't want to work till I'm 65. That's what and, I don't want to do that. So what can we do now to make sure that I can walk away whenever I want to walk away? And that's financial independence.
Great. Great. And my last word is abundance.
Abundance. I would say for that one, I mean, obviously, you want to have an abundance of money. Trying to limit, you don't need an abundance of things. I mean, I was cleaning my garage this last weekend, and it's amazing how, I mean, I moved every year for like 10 years, and I could fit all of my stuff just in my car when I moved. But then you buy a house, then you start acquiring more things. And, there's, I think, trying to limit the amount of the abundance of things that you have is something that, I'm definitely trying to work more towards.
Great. Great. So you need to get to a point of contentment.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Awesome. Awesome. So before we wrap up our conversation for today, how can financial education be improved globally in your own thoughts, in your own perspective? What do you think can be done so we can improve financial education, financial literacy on the global scale?
I think we just need to keep having conversations like this. I think people need to be honest about the mistakes that they made. And those mistakes are embarrassing, right? I talk to students all the time, so I don't, and I've shared these stories so many times that it doesn't necessarily sting the way that it was if maybe I'm retelling it for the first time, that like, yeah, leasing that car was a mistake. That was just a waste of money. We were spending more money. It's not even a car we liked. I took out student loans and didn't use it all appropriately, and then I had to pay it back for a long time, and it sucked. But not everybody's willing to share those stories, because money, as we started with the beginning of the conversation, it's still something that people don't like to talk about. They don't want to talk about how much they make. They don't want to talk about the way that they spend it. And then it becomes kind of this black box of, you don't know what are some of the mistakes that people are making, right? If you have an older brother and you're older, and you, like, I have an older brother, and I learned from his mistakes when I was growing up, right? Because he just got to be, he was older, so he got to do stuff before I could get to do those things. So he would kind of talk to me about them now, but he's not. And but we need those type of people who are willing to share about the financial mistakes. And I think now also as a parent, my mom didn't break down like all of their financials with us, but there are times where I'm interacting with a student, and I can think of a particular parent that called me one time. Her and her husband, they were having a bunch of problems with their business, and they were like, we're not going to be able to pay for our son's school anymore. Like, how can you help sort this out? And I'm like, well, have you talked to your son yet? And they're like, no, we don't want him to be stressed out by our financial situation. And I'm like, well, so this huge thing is happening in your life. You should feel comfortable sharing that with your son. Now, you don't want him to quit school and have to come home and maybe work and do all those other type of things, but I think that's a kind of a example of, people don't want to share these stories so that the next person can learn from them. We share all sorts of other stories. Why are we not as willing to share this one? People make mistakes doing all sorts of other things. Why is the money mistake such a mistake that people don't want to talk about?
Great. So let's keep the conversation going. Let's be honest with the conversation. Let's share our mistakes so others can learn from our mistakes and do the right thing when it comes to their finances. Great. So before I leave you, what is unique about University of Nevada, Reno? And what are some of your programs? How can people get in contact with University of Nevada?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say a couple things that are unique to the campus is, so we are in Northern Nevada, and I think we're in a great location. We have beautiful Lake Tahoe, which is only 45 minutes away from us. So that's a great spot that people love to go and visit. Our campus itself is absolutely beautiful. We are actually building a brand new business building that will be opening this summer, so it'll have the best state-of-the-art technology. I would encourage you to just Google what our campus looks like. It looks like an Ivy League campus, an East Coast campus on the West Coast, which is really nice. We're very close to a lot of the hubs. We're, about 4 hours away from San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Las Vegas is down to the south. Now it's a bit of a drive. If you're going to drive, it's about 8 hours, but you can catch a flight, very inexpensive. And there's probably 12 of those going back and forth every day. So, we're in the West, and it's not like the East Coast where I've lived there and you can get everywhere to major cities much quicker. But we're, I think, in a prime location to be able to take advantage of the tech hubs in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. We have lots of space here. That's why Tesla, they built one of their big warehouses or manufacturing plants here, because we have space for those type of things. And then in terms of the education that you're going to get here, we're a tier 1, research 1 university. Our College of Business has the top accreditation that you can have. So, whatever you're looking for in a college experience, we got it all. Division I sports, PhD programs, amazing fine arts, all the things. What I guess I tell students when I try to recruit them, whatever you see in a movie, we got all of that. And
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for doing this with us. This has been an insightful conversation, very educative, and I can see our viewers are so excited, and they will leverage this information to better manage their personal finance. They will leverage this information to get other people on board to keep the conversation going. So on a global stage, we can all help improve financial literacy and financial education. And so, like I said earlier, we will get in touch with your office, and there are a lot of conversation that we need to have to make sure we all work together to promote financial literacy. So thank you so much. If you have any final words that you want to share with our viewers, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the conversation, and I would just say, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. You can find me very simply, University of Nevada, Reno, Jeremy Tiedt, and find me on LinkedIn, and let's keep the conversations going.
Great. Thank you so much. So this has been the monthly Money Matters Convo. Today, we had an insightful conversation with the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Student Success at the College of Business, University of Nevada, Reno, Jeremy Tiedt, and it has been an insightful conversation. And so you can rewatch this conversation anytime you want to get insight, you want to get nuggets, just go back. This conversation will be available on our YouTube platform. It's available on my Facebook platform. You can always go back and watch and take the insight and use it to improve your financial life. Thank you so much. And so we meet again next month. This is the monthly Money Matters conversation. And always remember, the goal is not more money, but financial independence and financial freedom. Bye-bye.